Before we start the vlog, I want to make a brief little announcement. There may be some spoilers in this reading vlog, and since it's my first designated reading vlog, I did not even think about having a spoiler-free section and then making sure I specify when I'm going to chat about possible spoilers. I do not want to spoil anything for anyone. So if you have not read any of these books and you don't want to be spoiled, please do not watch this vlog. These books are Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zavin, The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed, and A Door in the Dark by Scott Rankin. Please, 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 please do not watch this video because I know how frustrating it can be to have a book ruined for you. Please return to this vlog after you read these books, or proceed if you don't mind possible spoilers. I would love to have you hang out with me, but I understand if you can't because you don't want to be spoiled. In my next reading vlog, I will be more mindful when discussing possible spoilers, and I will make sure I am clear when I will be sharing spoilers and when I won't be. But you have been warned for this vlog. I am so sorry, but this is my first vlog like this, and I'm still learning how to be a booktuber. Okay, bye. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Autumn and today I am doing a reading vlog. In my 2024 goals video, I talked about wanting to do more reading, bookish, and lifestyle type material that's not so much writing, and I decided today I'm gonna start a reading vlog. We'll see how this goes. But for the month of March, I have quite a few books that I'm really excited to read, so I decided I was gonna take you along on my reading journey this month. So the first book up that I have been reading, I'm about 40% of the way through, is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. This is her debut novel. So it follows our main character, Ava Kay, who was born into this really small village where all of the women and the young girls, they all have some type of magical ability, whether it's fire making, forging, healing, which are the three pretty significant magics. And there is a fourth type of magic in this world. These people are called seers, and they can foresee the future. Although they can't predict when they're going to be having their visions, they just come on suddenly. Our main character, she was born without any magical abilities. Throughout her entire life, the people of her village have seen her as an outcast and think that she has tainted blood, that there's a reason she doesn't have magical powers. So every few years, or every year, I believe, these people called the Woodsmen, they come from the kingdom and they take one of the women with magical abilities and bring her back to the palace, and she's never seen again. And our main character, her mother was sacrificed a few years ago when she was a child. The story opens up where they are preparing for Woodsman Day, and our main character, who doesn't have any powers, the woman who is like in control of this village, she decides that they are going to fake out the Woodsman and put Ava Kay in place of the girl that they are actually going to be searching for, which is a seer. And there is a reason why the king at this particular moment wants a seer, somebody who has visions to see the future. So our main character, who does not have any powers, is taken in place of the other girl. We have been going through a lot. It's been a really interesting story. There are some twists and turns. I feel like the writing style is really easy to read, and it's very poetic, and I feel like the author is not long-winded. She gives you just enough information that keeps the story flowing at a really great pace. So far I am enjoying it. I'm following along with the audiobook as I'm reading the physical book. I hope to finish this book in a couple of days, but we'll see what happens because I work for the next 3 days. But hopefully I can finish this and then we can talk about it. I don't plan on having any spoilers in this vlog, and this is also a library book. I have this for a little bit longer until I have to return it. I'm going to read for a little bit before I have to go to Barnes & Noble and return another book, but then get the book that I was originally supposed to get that I accidentally bought the wrong book. So I have to go to Barnes & Noble and make that exchange later today. So this is what we've got going on in this vlog. I'm so happy that you are here, and enjoy the vlog. I finished The Wolf and the Wisman by Ava Reid last night. I am coming on here to talk about my final thoughts and just to chat about my experience. I think I went into this book with different expectations. It left me a little more disappointed. I can see why this book is loved, and I know that this author has talent. I did really enjoy the writing style in this book. I know that this was the author's debut and that she has a lot of potential, and I'm hoping that with her other novels that the pacing and the plot and the characters will have a bit more depth to them. This story took wild turns that, I'll be honest, I didn't really understand at certain points. I was confused about 75% of the time what was going on. I think there was way too many religions, and all of these religions had multiple gods. I could not keep the gods straight for each religion, and I tried so hard. I even followed along with the audiobook, and I'm so glad I did, because a lot of the names in here I wouldn't have been able to pronounce, but I don't know if that really even mattered because I still just didn't quite understand the whole point of the story. Between like the 50% and the 75% mark of the story, it just lulled. There was not a whole lot that was going on. I was bored. Honestly, I was bored through pretty much this entire book, and I didn't really feel connected to any of the characters, which is a shame because I feel like it could have been a really strong story. It could have been something where there was a lot of emotional depth to the characters. I think the author was on a really cool and fun and unique track with what she wanted this story to be, and I think it could have been better. Plot to me personally was super messy. It just, like I said, I was just confused a lot of the times with this book, but it's not gonna make me not want to read any more from this author. I'm still planning on picking up any of her recent books. I know she has a book that either just came out or it's about to come out, and it's called Lady Macbeth, and it seems super cool and super interesting, so I will probably check it out eventually. But this one did fall a little flat for me. So I'm not a super big romance person. I don't have to have romance in my stories or in my fantasy in order for me to enjoy the story, but I went into this expecting romance. While there was romance and it was sprinkled throughout in a very slow burn type of way, which I do love slow burn romance, and an enemies to lovers type romance, I didn't feel it. I wasn't feeling it. Really, the only character I did like was the love interest. I feel like he had the most depth to his character, even though I feel like some of the things that he didn't quite make sense. Along with our main character, there were often times where she would confuse me. The village that she came from, she was pretty much abused by these people her whole life, her whole 25 years, her whole 5 and 20 years. I think that's how she was saying it. So for 25 years of her life, the people of her village would abuse her. She's got scars from being whipped and abused, and she would talk about some of the other girls that would like beat her up. All of this really hard-hitting, traumatic stuff. To me, the icing on the cake would have been when they chose to let her die basically and go to the capital with the king to be the sacrifice in place of one of the other characters that was a bully to her. I would not have wanted to come back to this village, not after they treated me like I was worth nothing. That was just weird to me. There were parts in the story where our main character even said things that were along the lines of she didn't want to return. There was like nothing left for her there. She did have one friend, but she had commented that they're nothing to her. And then, I don't know, maybe 70 pages later, she just looks at her love interest and was like, I just want to go home. To what? To whom? It wasn't what I was expecting, unfortunately, and I am glad that this is not a book I physically own. I got this one from the library, and then the audiobook I was able to get from the Libby app. I don't see this as one that I would purchase or would have purchased. It just actually happened that I decided to read this book because the audiobook was available through Libby, and my library had this book available within like a couple of days. That was why I had chose to read this book. Just a few more things. I know this review's a little bit all over the place, but just kind of stick with me. The pacing of this story was quite interesting. I mentioned this earlier where I felt like the 50% to like 75% of the story just kind of lulled. Nothing was moving towards the plot, the end goal, like that main plot of the story, or even some of the subplots. To me personally, just it was messy to me. But some of the chapters I found a little interesting, and they kind of reminded me of different levels in a video game. We would start out a chapter and they would have a speed bump or some type of drawback, but then by the end of that chapter it was resolved and then they were moving forward. And to me that reminded me a lot of a video game. While I talked about some of the characters being flat and I didn't really feel connected to them, the main plot just kind of not really making sense to me. I did love the lore, and I know I talked about earlier where it was confusing with all of the different religions that were within this world and all of them having different gods, that to try and keep all of the gods straight with all of the religions, that just confused the hell out of me. However, I did appreciate the lore, and I thought that the lore was super interesting, and I could tell that Ava Reed had a really fun time developing the lore and those types of elements like the fairy tales. I could tell that she enjoyed creating that for this world, and I did appreciate it and I did like it too. And honestly, some of that stuff was more interesting than the actual story itself. And I think the author was trying to present the lore to us as almost like a parallel to what this story was, but to me that just kind of fell flat. I feel like there could have been other ways that it was done, and we would also be told the same story multiple times also. Every single time lore or a story about a type of god or a type of person that changed the world in this story, we would get a massive info dump, and it was always the same way. I could always tell once we were gearing up to hear some type of story within the story, because it would go like, do you want to hear a story? Oh gosh, please, no, not again. And then we would get the story, or we would get, I have a story for you. And then they would all like sit down and then listen to the story. So I don't feel like the lore was executed in a very fun and interactive way for a reader, but that's just my personal opinion. I feel like it could have been done a little bit differently. It could have been woven in through the story a little bit better. And I do feel like we were getting repeated stories throughout. It was almost like it would happen and then a couple of pages later what it was supposed to parallel would parallel. You all right over there, kid? Are you okay? I didn't see what happened. And there was one part in this, maybe I just missed something. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention or it wasn't explained very well, but our main character held two things in her pocket pretty much the majority of the time. Her mother's braid and this coin that her father had given to her mother, and then her mother passed it down to her. So she had a piece of both of her parents with her at all times. Somewhere in the story, I want to say within the first 40% of the story, she reached into her pocket and the braid and the coin weren't there. And I was like, wait, why are they not there? And so I had to reflect a little bit. From what I found, there was nothing that said that she lost those things. And so I was a little confused about that. And then a little bit later into the story, maybe like 60% in, our main character had them in her pocket again. So I don't know if that was just an editing error and she wasn't supposed to have lost those things, but she had them by the end of the book. And I don't know if maybe I missed where she did lose them or someone took them from her and then gave them back. But that was something that I noticed, and it was something that was really confusing to me. And I kept thinking about that. What the hell happened? Why did she not have those with her? And where did they go? I couldn't figure out why that was written. I couldn't figure it out. And I could go on, but I did end up looking on Goodreads, and I feel like a lot of the 2 and 3 star reads were pretty much how I was feeling about this story. So it made me feel good that I wasn't the only person that was kind of feeling this way about this story, without trying to make this part too long and rambly, even though it's almost 15 minutes long at this point. Unfortunately, this was a disappointing read and kind of a disappointing start to my reading vlog, but I guess we can only go up from here. I am going to go ahead and return this back to the library today. We'll start the next book in this vlog very shortly. While I still have you, I want to go ahead and talk about the next book I am going to be reading, and it's going to be Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. I don't know a whole lot about this story, but I believe it's kind of like a paranormal type story where our main character, when she sees a couple, she can predict how the relationship is going to end, so she made like a promise to herself that she would not fall in love. And I heard that it's a bittersweet story. I'll just quickly read the synopsis. Evie Thomas doesn't believe in love anymore, especially after the strangest thing occurs one otherwise ordinary afternoon. She witnesses a couple kiss and is overcome with a vision of how their romance began and how it will end. After all, even the greatest love stories end with a broken heart, eventually. As Evie tries to understand why this is happening, she finds herself at La Brea Dance Studio, learning to waltz, foxtrot, and tango with a boy named X. X. X is all Evie is not: adventurous, passionate, and daring. His philosophy is to say yes to everything, including entering a ballroom dance competition with a girl he's only just met. Falling for X is definitely not what Evie had in mind. If her visions of heartbreak have taught her anything, it's that no one escapes love unscathed. But as she and X dance around and towards each other, Evie is forced to question all she thought she knew about life and love. In the end, is love worth the risk? So I think this sounds super cute, super fun, like a really fun, great time. I do have the audiobook on Libby, and it's a relatively short read. I think it's like an 8-hour audiobook. So I feel like I'll be able to finish this pretty quickly. I will be starting this next week. I have a book I have to read for a book club I have with one of my friends. We are reading all of Tolkien's work. I'm not going to include that book in this vlog just because I need to concentrate on that book because it's pretty dense. So I won't be giving updates on that one, but this will be the next book that's going to be up in this vlog. Okay, so I am about to go to the library to return these 2 books. The Plotters I read with a book club with a couple of my friends. We pick a book like every month or every other month and obviously just read it together. They're not on the internet. They don't have BookTube or other tube channels or anything. I need to go return this because this was our February read. And then I just talked about this book. So I'm gonna go drop these 2 books off at the library. I have one other book that I have to pick up from the library. And I also need to update my library card because, or what is it? Not update, renew my library card because it's gonna expire next week. But the day that it expires next week, I will be working. I need to go do that today. So that's what we're gonna go do. Noticed in the last clip, or maybe a couple of clips, but the parking lot to the library is packed. So I had to park down the street a little bit and then walk to the library. I always forget on Thursday mornings they always do an event for the little ones, and I know one time I went in there and they were singing songs in Spanish, which I absolutely loved. I think today they had just finished, so I don't know exactly what they were doing with the little ones, but I got the next read. It's Emily Henry's Beach Read. I've never read an Emily Henry, and I don't think I'm gonna be reading this for this vlog, but I felt like I wanted to share what I was picking up. I can't decide if I want to go get a coffee or not before I make it back home and do some reading. That's what we got going on for the rest of the day. So that was easy peasy. Good morning. The lighting's really bad because there's no sun outside and it's usually pretty dark in this corner. But as you see, I just made my little breakfast. I'm trying something new where I want to try and eat more vegetables in the morning. I love eating fruit in the morning and eggs. Those are my favorite things. But I want to try and eat more vegetables in the morning. Like as soon as I get up, I put some spinach and sweet potato in here. I also have some tomatoes, but those didn't make it in here because I just remembered that they were in there when I went to go put some cheese away. That's what I've got going on in here. I sprinkled some cheese on top and some chopped walnuts. I'm a liar. Some chopped pecans. I don't really care for nuts, but we have them and we need to use them. I'm going to spend the next hour or so reading and eating breakfast. I do have plans on reading instructions for dancing within this next hour. I need to put more workout music on my phone because I got a new phone and none of the music was backed up, so it all got wiped when my old phone just crashed and died. I'll check in with you guys when I've read a little bit of the book and I want to talk about it. When I've done some more things today, I probably shouldn't have started talking. I am just all over the place right now. So I'm gonna eat breakfast and we can chat later. I am about 50 pages in to instructions for dancing, and so far I am absolutely loving it. So in these first 50 pages, we have already met the love interest. So we follow our main character, who is Yvette Antoinette Thomas, and she goes by Evie. Her parents are divorced and she lives with her mother and her younger sister in an apartment. The first couple of chapters open up with Evie donating her romance books to the library. So her parents are divorced, but Evie was the one that discovered the affair that was going on, which led to her parents' divorce. And that happened off page before the story started. Well, not necessarily off page, but it did happen before the story started, and our character, she had a flashback where she talked about it happening. That happened before the story opened up, and our character, she is a teenager. She's in high school. She's about, I think, 18-ish, maybe 17, 18 years old. She went to go donate the rest of her books to a library, but the library was closed on the Sunday. She was riding her bike around, found a Free Little Libraries, and was going to put the rest of her books into that Free Little Library, and then a lady just kind of popped up behind her. They exchanged some words, and then when Evie was coming home, her younger sister had a boyfriend and she saw them kiss, and then we get the first vision. And so far I am absolutely loving this. The main character, she is a very fun and relatable character, and I really appreciate what the author is trying to do with this character. While the divorce and the affair is still pretty fresh in the lives of these characters, the sister and her mother have moved on, or that's what we're led to believe right now, that they have gotten over what happened and they're just trying to live their lives. And our main character is still just kind of healing in her own way from the divorce and from witnessing the affair. While she is upset and she is angry, I can appreciate that not every single conversation that our character has, she is angry. Like, she is not angry towards everybody. We've met some of her friends. We have met the love interest. Now, she was snarky with the love interest, but the events leading up to her first encounter with the love interest, and his name is X, short for Xavier, it makes sense as to why she's a little feisty with him. Not every interaction our main character has with every single person, she is angry or snappy or snippy or anything. So I do appreciate that. While I can continue to say I appreciate it, and the reasons why she is snarky with our love interest is because that stems back to her anger and her frustration towards her dad and the affair, but also the visions that she's seeing and just relationships in general. So far, 50 pages in, I am really having a lot of fun. There are some sweet, cute little fun one-liners in here. I do love our main character's best friend. His name is Martin. I don't think we've completely met her other two friends. They've just been mentioned, so I'm sure we'll see them more, hopefully, since they've been mentioned. Without saying much more of like spoilers or anything, she has gone to where she met X. She did go to this ballroom to figure out what's going on, because when she went to that Free Little Libraries, there was another book that was left in that little library. It had a little message in there that said, if found, please return to the La Brea studio, I believe, dance studio. So that's why she went to the studio, and she has already met X. The way that they meet, I think, is super cute. It's perfect. The writing is really easy to get into. I am loving the characters. I will update you guys when I read a little bit more. I'm here to wrap up my reading experience for March. I did end up finishing Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. I gave this 4 stars. I absolutely loved the writing style in this. It was really quirky and fun, and even though our main character is 18 years old, she reads very mature. I felt like I could relate to this character and all the experiences that she was going through in this story. I also loved the unique take. I feel like it's a unique take that it revolved around ballroom dancing. I think that's really fun. That's really cute. I have a cousin who used to do ballroom dancing, so I like the vibes of this, and I feel like it was kind of relatable for me. I also loved when our 2 main characters went on a little date. They went to go play pool, and I love pool. Listen, I suck at pool, but 3 shots in, pool is my jam. So I loved that that was in here. And then our main character and the love interest were being snarky to one another, and they were both hustling each other. I absolutely loved that. I thought that was really fun. I felt like it was, I say unique, it's very realistic, I guess that's how I should say, to me, with how it presents love and the idea of, is love worth the risk even if you know how it's gonna end? If you do know how it's going to end, should you still take the chance on it anyways? I love that because I think that is something that a lot of people think about, and not just romantic love, like taking a chance on a friendship. And that is what I really, really loved about this. Even though I think it is bittersweet, which was when a friend had recommended me this book, they had mentioned that it was a bittersweet book. So I did go into it knowing it's not going to be a typical happily ever after. It doesn't have to be, because I feel like this is very realistic, but I think this book handles the question of, is love worth the risk even if you know how it's going to end, very well. It's very well constructed. Even if you know a relationship is going to end, that doesn't mean you can't enjoy it while you have it. And I think that's a very realistic thing, and I think people are oftentimes afraid, in the real world, oftentimes afraid to take chances on relationships, whether they're friendships or romantic relationships, because we're afraid to get hurt and we're afraid to feel heartbreak and experience the sad part and the lows of that relationship. Our main character is somewhat like this, where she's guarded and she doesn't want to let herself get to falling in love based off of her visions and experiences in life. She knows that there's a lot of heartbreak that comes with it. But I think the message of this story is very beautiful and very realistic, because if you don't take a chance on love and on somebody, you're going to miss out on the beauty of that and on those memories. And I think this book was beautifully written. I had a lot of fun with it. It is sad, but I did give it 4 stars. I knocked off a star for 2 reasons. I felt like the middle part of this book was a little slow. It felt a little stagnant compared to the beginning. I feel like was very well paced, and I felt like the middle lulled just a smidge, and then the 3rd act, the last little portion, every page we were like flying through, hitting all of the topics, wrapping up everything. So I would have liked the pacing to have been a little more balanced, but that's just a personal preference for me and what I like with my stories. I don't think it took away from the storytelling and my enjoyment of the book. I mean, I guess I did knock down a star for that, or I guess it would be half a star, because then I took off another half star. I am not a fan of cheating, of reading about cheating, and I'm sure there are trigger warnings that I didn't look into. Maybe I did. Actually, it may have been discussed in the synopsis. No, maybe not. There is some cheating that goes on in here. I don't vibe with that. That's a personal preference, and I chose to read this book so I can suffer the consequences of reading a book with cheating. I don't really like the whole situation that goes around that. It's mentioned very early on that there is cheating and that a relationship ended due to the affair. However, the outcome of that affair takes place throughout the rest of this book. The main character and a few people are in a room. They're talking about the aftermath of the affair, which led into a different relationship, and that relationship is still ongoing. They're preparing for a marriage. I didn't like the situation that surrounded that conversation and how everything unfolded with that group of people together, because one, that relationship ended in a marriage and everybody is just downplaying that. That really rubbed me the wrong way, and I don't think it was meant to be written that way or to come across that way, but I for one didn't like that aspect of it. And it was pretty minor in the story. I mean, I finished the whole thing and I gave it 4 stars. My final thoughts on this is there were some very beautiful quotes in this book that I really loved, I really appreciated, and when I read them I was like, ooh, that's a good quote. I like that. I think it was, again, very well written, and it was a 4-star read. The next book that I read, and I did not give you guys any updates as I was reading this book, but it is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zavin. And I have a lot of thoughts surrounding this book. So this book, if you don't know, it follows our 2 main characters, Sam and Sadie, pretty much through their entire life, from when they're children to about when they're 35 or 37 years old. So it spans across 30-ish years of their friendship. It also revolves around video games, and with them creating video games from out of their apartment to moving to the West Coast and starting up a video game company. And it talks about the highs and lows of their relationship. It's pitched as they love each other, but they've never been in love. I gave this book 3 stars. For one, I feel like it was entirely too long for what the book was, but it's not that long. I think it's a little more than 400 pages. Oh no, it's just under 400 pages. And I know the audiobook was about 14 hours, so it wasn't a very long book, but by golly, did I feel like this book was way longer than it needed to be. Absolutely loved the beginning of this book. We'll just start there. I thought the beginning of this book was very well paced. I love how the characters were introduced throughout the story, and I really did enjoy a lot of those characters. One thing that I felt like was an issue throughout this whole story, it was predominant in the first half of this until I got used to the writing style, and this could just be this author's writing style, but we would bebop between present day and then past events, and it was very abrupt. It was very sudden. To me, it wasn't always very clear when that would happen. We would be in present day having a conversation about something, and then we would instantly go to the past without any indication of it being a flashback, and then we would immediately jump back into present day. Or it would be we were talking about a certain situation and then we jump to an interview that would happen later on in the future, and then we would come back to present day. It was very odd. It was a very interesting writing style, and I'm not quite sure if I liked it. The second half of this book was unnecessary. It made the story a lot longer than it needed to be. And there was a chapter in here, I think the audiobook for it was an hour long. These were pretty long chapters from what I remember listening to the audiobook. There was one chapter in here, it was an hour long, and by golly, did I almost break out into tears because I was so bored. And this chapter was very interesting. It was well into the story, maybe about 70-75% into the story. It was a completely different format, and it almost felt like to me that it was an afterthought of the author that she inputted this scene or this chapter, excuse me, into the book after everything else was written. It was a little strange. This really isn't a spoiler, and I mean, I don't consider this a spoiler, but this one chapter, it is them playing a video game, and it was very odd because it was very repetitive. I just feel like they could have completely edited that chapter out and the book wouldn't have changed. I don't think it changed the story in any way. I loved the side characters more than I loved Sam and Sadie, which they were our 2 main characters. I did not like Sadie. I thought that she was a very mean and nasty person, and I just don't see how anybody would want to be friends with her. I also didn't really care for Sam because he felt very monotoned. It was very boring to be around him. And I hate to say that because he was a character that had a lot of trauma, that had a lot of traumatic events that happened to him. And he spent a lot of his life in pain. I feel like he was very much a character that had a lot of struggles and could be very relatable. But I think the way that he was written and how his scenes were played out were just strange. It was hard to connect with him at times. And he had this weird fascination with Sadie, and I just didn't like that. I never really understood how it could be pitched as they're two friends often in love but never lovers, as it's presented in the blurb. I never got those vibes of the two of them being in love because they were always just straight nasty to each other. I didn't like that. I didn't see where they had a hot and cold relationship. I mean, I could have bought it if you could see the ups and downs of their relationship and their struggles over like their 30 years of friendship and how complicated it is, but I didn't see that. I didn't really understand how they were still even friends after all of the things that happened, and the things that they did to each other were just mean. It was a struggle, and I'm giving it 3 stars. I did not enjoy this as much as I thought I was going to. Now, I absolutely loved Sam's grandparents. I thought they were really cute. They were really fun. They owned a little pizza restaurant with an arcade in it, and I loved all of those chapters. I loved seeing all of his interactions with his grandparents. I thought that those scenes were very sweet. And I also loved the scenes with Sam and his mom. I really loved his mom's character. I thought she was fantastic, and I actually would have preferred her story over this story, but whatever. I also loved Simon and Ant. However, I was a little confused. I might have to go back. I mean, I probably won't, but there was something in here that I was really confused about. I thought Simon and Ant, when they were originally introduced, and I want to say it was Sadie who was talking about this, Sadie had mentioned that Simon and Ant had known each other since they were in diapers and grew up together. Now they're partners and they work very well together, and they're building their video game together as a team, but they're also a couple and they come into work together and they just have a great relationship and it just radiates off of them. But then further on into the story, somebody else had mentioned Simon and Ant met in college. That started their relationship, and then that started their partnership in video games. I don't know if that was an editing error or if I took it literally, like quite literally, when Sadie said that they grew up and they've been friends forever. They've always been in each other's lives since they were in diapers. Unless I took that literally and she just meant as they're so close, it's like they've known each other forever. I hope I'm explaining that very well, but I was very confused about the timeline with those two characters and their relationship because I thought it was supposed to be a parallel between Sadie and Sam and then Simon and Ant. But then when Sadie had said, I think it was Sadie had said later on, or maybe it wasn't Sadie, but whatever, when the story said later on that they had met in college, that just completely threw everything off for me and I was very confused. So I could go back and look at that, actually verify what storyline is correct, but that requires me flipping through a book I didn't really enjoy to try and find that, and I don't know if I have the energy for it. The bottom line is I didn't really like this. Even though I gave it 3 stars, it's probably a 2.5 to a 3 star. I feel like it depends who I talk to and what day of the week it is. It felt very repetitive. I mean, we kept going around and around and around with certain situations and nothing was ever really resolved. I did not like the friendship between Sadie and Sam. I thought it was very toxic. I did not believe the love story. I don't know, that was just kind of weird to me. They argued and were constantly fighting over stupid things, and it was the same things and nothing was ever resolved. I was very disappointed in this read. But that's all I'm gonna say about that, and I'll go ahead and move on to the final book I want to chat about. Actually, I have 2 more, but it's still gonna be very brief. So this one is going to be a soft DNF because for whatever reason, the information with the story was just going in one ear and out the other, and I couldn't concentrate. It all felt very confusing. The writing style was weird. I couldn't get into the headspace. I couldn't really connect with the main character. And I think all of that had to do with, I was trying to read this book after working a 12-hour shift, and I think I was just so tired, I couldn't focus. So I am blaming that as the issue. We're softy and effing this book for now. I have full intentions of giving it another shot. I think I just need to move on, read a few more books in different genres, and then come back to it. This book I am talking about is A Door in the Dark by Scott Rankin. Brief synopsis is there are 6 wizards in a room. They all get in a fight. Magic starts flying everywhere. They get portaled into a different place. They're all coming to, waking up, and they discover that one of them is dead, but nobody knows who caused all of this to happen. It sounds really interesting. I want to say I read about 50 pages the first 2 or 3 chapters. I was struggling. It's a softie enough, and I really want to give this book a shot because I love the story about the author behind this book getting published. The author had written this book. Him and his agent loved it. They both had high hopes for it. They were really, really invested into this story. So they sent the book out to try and get it traditionally published, and they didn't get any bites. Nobody was interested in this story. His agent was like, look, I have one more place that we can submit this story to. If they reject it, or if we don't hear anything from them, we might have to shelve this book forever or come back to it later on down the road. With the last publishing house that they sent this book out to, whoever they sent it to loved it. It got published. That's why I really want to give this book a shot, and I really love the cover of this. It's really interesting. So those were all the books that I read in March, and that is going to be included in this vlog. I have started reading Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca May, but I'm not going to include this book in this vlog because by the time I finish this book, it's going to be in April. If you're curious about my thoughts on this book and you want to see me chat about it, let me know down in the comments below. But that is everything that I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this long video and this long update at the end. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you're still here, leave me the little lucky charm emoji down in the comments below, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.